Rain ticked against the hospital window like impatient fingers. The room was dim except for the glow of a monitor, the steady rhythm of Ethan Ward's heart displayed in pale green lines. He sat upright, coughing into his fist, his body still aching from the pneumonia that had nearly collapsed his lungs. The 4 taped to his arm tugged every time he shifted. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and damp cloth. He reached for his phone on the tray. A new message for Grace. For a moment, he expected the usual. Something gentle, maybe a photo of the house or a promise she'd bring soup. Instead, the words sliced through the quiet like glass. Don't come back. He lives here now. Ethan's thumb froze above the screen. His chest tightened in a way the oxygen cannula couldn't ease. He read it again and again. The sentence didn't scream, it bled. He saw the house in his mind, the small yellow one on Haskell Street, the porch light he'd wired himself, the sycamore tree dropping leaves across the steps. He imagined another man's shoes in the hallway, another man's hand resting on the banister he had sanded smooth. The thought hollowed him. His first instinct was to call her, demand answers, but training as a firefighter had taught him something important. Panic fed flames. Control put them out. He inhaled slowly, trying to calm the storm inside. Instead of calling Grace, he pressed another name. Margot Crane, Grace's older sister. A property lawyer, sharp as cut glass. Margot, he said when she picked up, his voice hoarse. I need help. Legal help. Tonight. There was no surprise in her reply, only a steadying calm. Tell me. He told her about the message, every word. Silence hummed for a beat on the other end, broken only by the tapping of her keyboard. Screenshot it. Don't reply, she said firmly. I'll pull the deed records tonight. I'll check if anyone's tried to move property under your name. We'll get a protective order by morning. By noon tomorrow, you'll be home with a civil standby officer. But Ethan, you must not confront her alone. Her decisiveness grounded him. He lowered the phone, his eyes wet without realizing when the tears had started. Outside, an ambulance howled down the wet street, a reminder that emergencies came in layers, the body, the home, the heart. Hours dragged. At 10, Margot sent a screenshot of the county portal. The deed was still in his name. But someone, Grace or Nolan, had attempted a quitclaim deed earlier that day. It had been rejected. The notary's name, Lydia Crane. Another buzz, a video. Their neighbor, Mrs. Patel, had forwarded her doorbell footage. The screen showed his porch at 2 a.m. 2 nights ago, a man, tall, athletic, wearing a cap, let himself in with a keypad code. He carried a duffel bag and a file box. Recognize him? Mrs. Patel had written. Grace said he was a cousin. He parked a gray Tacoma in your spot. Ethan paused the video on the profile. Sharp jaw, gym-built frame. Recognition burned. Nolan Price, the financial advisor Grace once joked about at the gym. The monitor beeped faster as Ethan gripped the phone. His lungs ached, but his anger burned cleaner than the infection ever could. He typed to Margot, see you at the house at noon. Then he set the phone down, staring at the ceiling. The fluorescent light above him buzzed faintly. He imagined his coffee mug back home, sitting cold on the counter, or worse, washed, dried, and put away by a stranger. The rain outside thickened, streaking the glass. Ethan closed his eyes. He wasn't just fighting for his lungs anymore. He was fighting for his home, and he had 24 hours to take it back. The night inside the hospital was longer than any Ethan Ward had ever lived through. He had fought wildfires that raged for days, carried victims out of burning apartments, but nothing compared to lying helpless under fluorescent light, staring at a single message that threatened to erase his life. Grace's words echoed with every beep of the monitor. Don't come back. He lives here now. His body was weak, but his mind sharpened. He forced himself to sit straighter, coughing against the pressure in his lungs. On the tray, his phone buzzed again. It was Margot, a screenshot from the county records. The house title remained untouched, still in Ethan's name. Relief lasted only a breath. Margot's message continued. Someone attempted a quitclaim deed today. Rejected. The notary stamp was fake, Lydia Crane. Ethan's jaw tightened. It wasn't just betrayal. It was an attempt to strip him of everything he had built. Another buzz. This time, a short video file. He pressed play, and Mrs. Patel's doorbell camera came to life. The porch of his house appeared, lit by the dim street lamp. At 2 a.m., a tall man walked up casually, duffel bag slung over one shoulder, file box under his arm. He punched in the keypad code and stepped inside like he owned the place. The man's profile, caught by the camera's angle, was unmistakable. Sharp jaw, cropped hair, lean muscle that came from hours in a gym. Ethan had seen him once, scrolling through Grace's phone. Nolan Price, the advisor she said was just helping with finances. The video ended, leaving only the sound of rain outside the hospital. Mrs. Patel's text followed. Grace told me he was her cousin. But I know cousins don't move in at 2 a.m. with boxes. Ethan's hand trembled, but not from sickness. Fury burned hot, mixing with disbelief. He pressed the phone to his chest, eyes closed. He wanted to scream, to tear the 4 from his arm, to march home and throw Nolan out himself. But Margot's voice echoed in his head. Do not confront her alone. Wait for the order. Wait for me. He forced himself to breathe. Control, put fires out. Panic fed them. At midnight, another message from Margot. I've contacted a judge. Emergency possession order will be signed by morning. Officer Mira Valdez will meet us tomorrow at noon. Don't answer Grace. Don't answer Nolan. Let them think silence means surrender. Ethan read it 3 times. His chest rose and fell, heavy but steady. He typed back only 2 words. Thank you. Hours crawled. Nurses came and went, adjusting 4 bags, checking vitals. Ethan drifted in and out of shallow sleep. But every time he closed his eyes, the same image returned. Nolan in his kitchen, leaning against the counter where Ethan once taught himself to install cabinets, smiling at Grace as though he belonged there. By dawn, the rain slowed. Pale light touched the hospital blinds. Ethan sat up, unhooked from monitors, waiting for the discharge papers. His bag was already packed. He would not spend another night away from his house. At 9, Margot texted again. Meet me 1 block from the house at noon. Don't go alone. Officer Valdez will enforce the order. Ethan clenched his fists. The plan was set. The trap was ready. He imagined the porch again, but this time, Nolan standing outside. Not with a duffel, not with confidence, but with his hands shaking as an officer told him the truth he could not deny. Ethan exhaled slowly. In less than 3 hours, he would face the people who had turned his life upside down. For now, all he could do was wait. At 11:58, Ethan stood with Margot on the corner beneath the wet sycamores, the house visible half a block away like a memory you're afraid to touch. Officer Mira Valdez rolled up, lights off, uniform neat, expression neutral. She greeted them with a small nod and held up a folded document sealed with a blue stamp. Emergency possession order, she said. I'll keep the peace while you re-enter. No shouting, no touching. If anyone claims a right to be here, they'll need to show me lawful proof, lease, court order, something real. Ready? Ethan swallowed. Ready. They walked. Every step seemed to measure the distance between the life he had and the one trying to replace it. The porch boards creaked as he climbed. The carved notch on the rail, where he'd slipped with the sander, was still there, a tiny scar in the wood. He lifted his hand to knock, but the door opened first. Grace stood in the frame, as if she had been listening for them. Hair pinned carefully, lipstick precise, a sweater he bought last winter pulled tight around her. Her eyes found Ethan's, then flicked to the officer, then to Margot's folder. You shouldn't have brought police, she said, voice low. Officer Valdez answered, even. Ma'am, I'm here to prevent a disturbance. We have a court order. May we come in? Grace hesitated only a heartbeat. Fine. She stepped back. The smell hit him first. Eucalyptus and detergent. A new candle undercutting the trace of his aftershave that used to live in the hall. The entry table was rearranged. His keys bowl swapped for a glossy tray. On the shoe rack, a pair of men's trainers he didn't recognize. In the bathroom, a second toothbrush lay diagonally across his. Margot moved with method. Grace, for the record, this is still Ethan's separate property. No transfer has occurred. A quitclaim filed yesterday was rejected for defective notarization. We'll need any keys or codes provided to non-residents. She kept her tone clinical, offering no room for argument, only facts. Grace hugged herself. You're turning this into a war. It became one when someone tried to take his house. Margot said, not unkindly. Ethan tried to keep his eyes from catching on small betrayals. The living room throw blanket was folded the way he never folded it. Sharp edges, not his lazy tuck. On the mantel, the photo of his academy graduation had been moved to the far side, half hidden behind a plant. His coffee mug, shift happens, was upside down on the drying rack, water beading on its lip like sweat. From the kitchen came a voice that fit the house like a wrong note. Everything okay, Grace? Footsteps. Then the man from the video turned the corner, casual as a neighbor, sleeves tight around gym arms. A faint smile set like a challenge. Nolan Price stopped when he saw the officer. The smile thinned, then returned, smaller. Afternoon. He looked to Ethan as if they were equals meeting for the first time. I figured you'd come sooner or later. Ethan's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. Valdez stepped forward with the paper. Sir, I'm Officer Valdez. Can I have your full name? Nolan Price. Mr. Price, do you have a lease for this address? Any document granting you possession? Grace invited me, he said lightly. We're together. That's not a lease, Valdez said. If you claim tenancy, you'll need proof. Do you have any? Nolan's gaze drifted toward Grace, then to the island where a file box sat half open, manila tabs sharp against the white stone. Paperwork's in progress, he said. There was a deed. Rejected. Margot cut in, sliding a printed screenshot across the counter. The heading was County Standard. The red text read returned, defective notary. Below, a name, Lydia Crane. Nolan's jaw ticked, a tiny stutter in a mask. We'll fix it. You won't, Margot said. Not today, not here. Silence gathered like static. Outside, a car splashed through a puddle and kept going. Inside, Ethan felt the pull of two tides, one that wanted to lunge, to reclaim with noise, another that kept him anchored to the officer's calm and the judge's ink. He chose the second. He kept his hands at his sides. Grace's posture softened, almost imperceptibly. Nolan, she said, a warning layered with something like doubt. He didn't look at her. Officer, you can't just. Valdez lifted the order. I can enforce this. Mr. Ward is granted exclusive temporary possession pending hearing. You're here without lawful right. You may collect personal items with a police escort later. For now, you need to step outside. Nolan's eyes flicked to the front door, to Ethan, to the file box. He exhaled through his nose, measuring. We'll see about that. He didn't move. Valdez's hand hovered near her radio. Not a threat, a promise of procedure. Now, Mr. Price. For the first time, Ethan saw it. A tiny tremor in Nolan's fingers where they rested on the island, a ripple under the surface. The mask wasn't cracking yet, but it had learned the shape of the crack. Ethan spoke, quiet. Leave. The word didn't shout. It set a line on the floor. Nolan straightened, rolled his shoulders like a man about to lift weights he'd misjudged. He grabbed the back of a chair, then let it go. For a second, nobody breathed. Then he smiled again, brittle. Fine. If we're playing paperwork, let's play paperwork. He reached for the file box. Margot's hand touched the lid first. Don't. Margot's palm pressed firm against the file box, stopping Nolan's hand inches from the lid. Her lawyer's instincts told her what Ethan only felt in his gut. Whatever was inside was more dangerous than the man himself. Nolan's jaw tightened, his lips curling into a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Afraid of paperwork? He asked, his tone mocking. Officer Valdez shifted slightly, positioning herself between Nolan and the counter. Step back, sir. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried authority that made the room seem smaller. Grace stood near the sink, arms wrapped around her waist as if to hold herself together. Her eyes darted between the three of them, lingering on the box like it was a bomb she had helped assemble without understanding what it could do. Margot calmly lifted the lid. Inside, the truth was stacked in manila folders, neatly labeled, alongside objects that didn't belong in any ordinary household. She pulled out the first folder and flipped it open. Blank quitclaim deeds, she said flatly. There were 3, each with Ethan's parcel number already typed in, each waiting only for a forged signature. Ethan's breath caught. He clenched his fists, nails biting his palms. He thought of Grace's text, those brutal words, "Don't come back. He lives here now." And realized they had been part of a script, a performance written by someone else. Margot reached deeper. "Notary stamps," she murmured, holding up 2 rubber seals wrapped in plastic. One of them reads Lydia Crane. Her eyes flicked up to Nolan, the same notary whose stamp was already flagged as fraudulent. Nolan leaned casually against the island, though a faint twitch had returned to his fingers. Everyone cuts corners. Doesn't make it criminal. Margot ignored him and lifted a small bottle. The seal was bent upward, pressed back down clumsily. Ethan recognized it instantly. The same cough syrup Grace had given him the night before he collapsed. His chest felt cold. He looked at Grace. Her eyes widened, filling with tears. "I didn't know," she whispered. "He said it would help you sleep, that you needed rest." Nolan's smirk deepened, crueler now. "You see? She cared for you. I was helping her manage what you couldn't." "Helping?" Margot snapped, her control finally showing cracks. "You manipulated her. You poisoned him. And you tried to steal his home." She dropped the bottle back into the box with a sharp clatter. Officer Valdez keyed her radio. "Dispatch, this is 12 David. I need property crimes at Haskell Street. Possible evidence of fraud and adulterated medication." The calm, procedural words cut through the tension, making Nolan's smirk falter. Ethan finally spoke. His voice was low, steady, but it carried the weight of every sleepless night he'd worked, every brick of that house he'd fought to hold together. "You walked into my home with forged papers and lies. You used my wife's anger against me. You thought I wouldn't come back, but I did." Nolan straightened, the smugness thinning. "This isn't over." Valdez's gaze didn't waver. "Yes, it is. At least for today." Grace finally broke, tears sliding down her cheeks. She looked at Ethan, but his eyes didn't meet hers. He was staring at Nolan, memorizing the sight of him shrinking under the weight of truth. The sound of sirens grew faint in the distance, cutting through the damp air outside. Nolan tried to push past, but Valdez blocked him with one hand raised. "You'll stay right here until detectives arrive." For the first time, the mask slipped completely. The calm, arrogant confidence drained from Nolan's face, replaced by something smaller, rawer, fear. His fingers shook as he stepped back from the island. Ethan didn't move. He didn't need to. He had already reclaimed the space by standing in it, by refusing to be erased. The sirens grew louder. Grace's sobs filled the silence. Margot closed the file box with finality, sealing Nolan's fate along with it. And in that charged, fragile moment, the house seemed to exhale, like it knew who belonged within its walls and who never had the right to be there. The wail of approaching sirens cut through the silence inside the house. Red and blue lights began to flicker faintly through the rain-streaked window. Officer Valdez stood steady, one hand near her radio, her eyes never leaving Nolan. Nolan's shoulders, once squared in arrogant defiance, sagged slightly. He adjusted his stance, as if trying to recover his bravado, but the tremor in his hands betrayed him. "You're overreacting," he muttered. "Grace asked me to be here. That's not a crime." Margot shut the file box and slid it toward herself, a deliberate barrier between him and the evidence. Invitations don't override property law. And forged documents? Poison medication? That's more than a misunderstanding. Grace pressed her palms against the edge of the sink, her knuckles white. Her lips parted as if to speak, but the words collapsed in her throat. Tears welled in her eyes, shame cutting deeper than Nolan's smirk ever could. The knock came firm, commanding. 2 detectives entered, rain glistening on their jackets. One was broad-shouldered with tired eyes, the other younger, notebook in hand. Valdez briefed them quickly, handing over the emergency order and gesturing to the box. The older detective, Ramirez, lifted the lid and sifted through the contents with latex gloves. He paused at the quitclaim deeds, his brows furrowing. Already typed with parcel numbers. Looks like someone was ready to steal more than just space. The younger detective, Lynn, lifted the cough syrup bottle, turning it under the light. Seal's been tampered with. His eyes flicked to Ethan. You've been sick. Hospitalized, Ethan said. His voice was calm, but there was a storm under the words. Collapsed after drinking tea she made me. With that syrup. Grace's sob broke the moment. I didn't know, she cried. Her voice cracked, desperation raw. I swear, I thought it was medicine. He told me it would help him rest. I never. Ramirez's eyes landed on Nolan. That true? You giving people doctored medication now? Nolan lifted his chin, mask slipping back into place, smugness crawling onto his face. I don't answer questions without a lawyer. Ramirez almost smiled, humorless. Good. You'll have plenty of time to find one. He motioned to Lynn, who began bagging the evidence. Ethan stood silent, his chest heavy but steady. He didn't need to shout. Watching Nolan shrink under the presence of the detectives was justice in itself. Nolan suddenly pushed back, his voice sharp. You're all making a mistake. Grace wanted this. She told me she was done with him. She's the one who opened the door, who gave me the code. She's the one who... Enough. Grace's voice pierced the room, trembling but loud. She turned on Nolan, tears streaking her face. You told me what to say. You told me what to text. You made me send those words. Her breath shook. I hated Ethan's distance. I was angry, but I never wanted to destroy him. You used me. The room froze. Ethan's heart clenched at her confession. He remembered lying in the hospital bed, staring at those words, believing they had come from her alone. Now the truth unfolded, layered, ugly, but different for what he thought. Nolan laughed once, hollow. Don't play the victim, Grace. You wanted him gone. You wanted the house, the freedom. I just gave you the push. Detective Ramirez cut him off with a firm hand on his shoulder. That push ends here. Nolan tried to twist away, but Lynn already had the cuffs ready. The sharp click echoed in the kitchen. For the first time, Nolan's smirk died completely. Grace collapsed into a chair, covering her face. The sound of her sobbing filled the space. Ethan looked at her, pain knotting inside him. She wasn't innocent. She had opened the door. But she wasn't the architect either. She had been a weapon placed in someone else's hand. Ramirez gathered the file box and turned toward Ethan. We'll need you at the station tomorrow to give a full statement. But for now, the house is yours. You won't be back tonight. Ethan nodded, his voice thick but steady. Thank you. As Nolan was let out into the rain, neighbors began peeking through curtains, whispers buzzing like electricity down the street. Under the flashing lights, Nolan's arrogance melted completely. He looked small, wet, and exposed. Ethan stood in the doorway, the porch light glowing above him. For a moment, the house felt like it exhaled, a long, tired breath of relief. But inside, the weight of betrayal lingered. Grace's sobs, the memory of her text, the knowledge of what had nearly been lost, all of it hung heavy in the air. And Ethan knew the storm wasn't over. It had only shifted. The patrol car's taillights disappeared down Haskell Street, red streaks swallowed by the misty rain. For the first time in 24 hours, the house was quiet. But it wasn't peace. It was the silence of an aftermath. Inside, the kitchen still smelled faintly of eucalyptus candles and detergent, a cover for everything rotten beneath. Grace sat hunched at the table, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Her sweater sleeves were damp where she had wiped her face. Across from her, Ethan remained standing, one hand braced against the counter, as if he needed it to stay upright. Margot stacked her papers neatly, methodical as always, but her sharp eyes never left Grace. The detectives have the evidence. Nolan will be processed tonight. But Ethan, she softened slightly. This isn't just about him. It's about what happened in here. Grace looked up, her mascara smudged, her face pale and raw. I didn't mean to destroy you, she whispered. Her voice cracked. I was angry, Ethan. You were never home. You worked until midnight, came back exhausted, barely spoke to me. I felt invisible. When Nolan came around, he listened. He made me feel like I mattered. Her words landed heavy. Ethan swallowed hard. So you let him into our home. His tone wasn't raised, but every word carried the weight of a stone. Grace's lips trembled. It started small. He offered to help with the bills, said he knew how to reorganize finances. Then he said we could secure the house, make it ours in case anything happened to you. He told me I had to prove I wasn't afraid of change. And when you collapsed that night, he said you'd be fine, but that I should send that text to keep you away. Ethan's stomach twisted. He remembered the tea she had made, the metallic taste he couldn't explain. The syrup, he said, his voice low. Grace shook her head violently, tears spilling. I didn't know. I swear, I thought it was normal medicine. He said you'd sleep easier, that your body needed rest. I would never try to hurt you. Margot leaned forward, her tone clipped. Grace, ignorance doesn't excuse intent. You sent that message. You gave him the keypad code. You invited him into a house that wasn't yours to give. Grace flinched at each word, but she didn't deny it. I was weak. I let my resentment blind me, and he used that to control me. She pressed her hands against her face. I thought I was punishing you. I didn't see that I was helping him erase you. The weight of her admission filled the room. Ethan stared at her, searching for anger to release, but what he found was something heavier, disappointment. I lay in that hospital bed, reading those words, believing you meant every one of them, he said quietly. I thought I'd lost you. I thought I had nothing left. Grace's sobs grew louder, raw and unrestrained. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. Ethan, please. I can't undo it, but I can help fix what's left. I gave the detectives everything, every text, every voice memo. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes to put him away. Ethan didn't take her hand. He stepped back, pulling in a slow, heavy breath. This isn't about fixing him. It's about fixing us. And I don't know if that's possible. Silence fell again, broken only by the sound of rain tapping against the window. Margot closed her folder with finality. I'll coordinate with the DA tomorrow, she said. For tonight, Ethan, change the code. Grace, it's better if you don't stay here. Grace's head snapped up, her eyes wide. You're sending me away? Margot's expression didn't waver. You helped open the door to this disaster. Ethan needs space. If you want to prove you're serious, respect that. Grace's lips quivered, but she nodded. I'll go, she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan watched her stand, watched her gather her bag with trembling hands. He didn't stop her. He didn't say goodbye. He only turned to the porch light switch, flicking it on. Warm light spilled across the wet steps outside, illuminating the path she walked as she left the house behind. For the first time all night, Ethan breathed deeply. The house is again. But the silence it gave back wasn't comforting. It was heavy, full of questions no one had answered yet. And he knew this wasn't the end of Grace's story in his life. It was only the beginning of a reckoning. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Ethan woke in the guest room, the mattress unfamiliar beneath his back, the air heavy with eucalyptus that still lingered from Grace's candles. He made coffee in his old, chipped mug, staring at the steam curling upward. The sound of it pouring into the cup felt louder than it should have, like the house itself was straining to fill the silence Grace had left behind. He had thought her absence would feel like relief. Instead, it was a weight pressed against his chest. Every object in the house seemed to whisper questions he didn't want to answer. The coat still hanging by the door, the half-used lotion on the dresser, the faint trace of her perfume on the hallway carpet. His phone buzzed. A message from Margot. Detectives confirmed, Nolan isn't just a mistake. He's a pattern. For other addresses, two already in litigation. He targets spouses left alone when the other is sick or away. He charms, pressures, files fake deeds, and then claims occupancy. You were almost next on his list of trophies. Ethan's stomach tightened. He scrolled to the next message. DA wants you to testify. They'll need details about the syrup, the text, everything. Be ready. Nolan will fight back. Ethan set the phone down, staring at the porch. The morning sun pushed through the sycamore branches, casting fractured shadows across the steps. For a moment, he imagined Nolan standing there again, smug and certain, and it sent a pulse of anger through him. He couldn't sit still. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The cool air carried the scent of wet leaves and distant exhaust. Mrs. Patel was sweeping her porch across the street. When she saw him, She hesitated, then crossed over, broom still in hand. I saw the cars last night, she said softly. Is it over? Ethan shook his head. Not yet. But it's moving. She handed him a slip of paper. My son pulled the footage from the last 2 weeks. Nolan came by 6 times before you went into the hospital. Always late. Always with that duffel. It wasn't sudden. He planned this. Ethan's chest tightened again. He thanked her, promising to give the footage to the detectives. Back inside, the walls seemed closer, the air heavier. He sat at the kitchen table, opening Grace's last texts. They weren't many, but each one now felt loaded. He says you need rest. Don't argue, Ethan. It's for your health. And finally, don't come back. He lives here now. The words pulsed on the screen, the cruelty sharp even with the knowledge she'd been manipulated. By afternoon, Margot arrived, dropping her briefcase on the counter. They'll try to argue Grace gave consent, she said bluntly. That she let him in, made it cohabitation, not trespass. We'll fight it, but Ethan, you need to be prepared for Nolan to drag her name through court. Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. She already destroyed herself when she let him in. Margot's gaze softened. You still love her. He didn't answer. The silence was answer enough. That night, as he prepared for bed, his phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Margot. It was an unknown number. He opened it, pulse quickening. You think it's over? I don't go down easy. You were just one house. There are others. And Grace? She'll talk when I tell her to. She's mine more than yours. Ethan's blood ran cold. Nolan's reach wasn't ended by handcuffs. It was still alive, whispering through borrowed phones, through fear, through the cracks Grace had left behind. Ethan locked the doors, checked the windows, and sat at the dining table with the porch light blazing. For the first time in years, he felt like a stranger in his own home. The fight wasn't over. It was only shifting into a darker phase. He stayed at the dining table with the porch light blazing, the phone face down beside his coffee ring. The unknown message crawled under his skin. You think it's over? Grace will talk when I tell her to. He flipped the phone, took a screenshot, and forwarded it to Margot and Detective Ramirez. Then he called the non-emergency line, voice steady by force. Save everything, Ramirez texted back within a minute. That's witness tampering. We'll flag the judge. Keep doors locked. Patrol car will swing by. The house breathed in small sounds. Heater ticking, a pipe settling, rain loosening one last bead from eaves. He checked the deadbolts again. The keypads glowed a soft blue, newly reprogrammed, the sequence in his head like a prayer. Mrs. Patel's name lit the screen. He's not here, but a gray Tacoma circled twice, 11:43 and 11:51. My camera caught plates. Sending. A clip followed, headlights sliding past, the Tacoma's silhouette pausing at the corner like a thought that hadn't decided to become action yet. His chest tightened. He typed back, thank you. Stay inside. Doors locked. The phone rang again. Grace. A hotel AC unit hummed behind her voice. Someone called me from a blocked number, she whispered. They played my own voice back, the line I sent you. Don't come back. He lives here now. Then a man said, you remember your part. Ethan, I'm so stupid. He closed his eyes. Go to the station, he said. Give Ramirez everything. Tonight. I will. A breath. I'm scared. So am I, he said, because honesty was the only thing that could live here now. But we do this straight. A sound outside, a metal scrape against wood. He froze. The side gate latch. He set the phone down silently, moved to the window, parted the curtain a finger's width. The porch washed the yard in warm light. Beyond it, a sliver of darker motion slid along the fence. He dialed 911. Side yard, he murmured. Someone's at my gate. Haskell Street. I have an active case with Detective Ramirez. Units en route. Stay inside, the dispatcher said. The scrape turned to a rattle, then stopped. Footsteps pattered away, too light to be Nolan's gym weight. A shadow flicked past the sycamore and was gone. He stood with his back to the wall until red and blue washed the room. 2 officers cleared the yard, then knocked. The younger one held a wrinkled manila envelope he'd found tucked under the gate hinge. Inside was a single sheet, printer ink still sharp. Vacate by Friday. Don't testify. Fires happen. Ethan felt heat crawl up his neck, anger and memory, the taste of smoke and the way roofs fail. Officer Valdez arrived a moment later, off-shift jacket over her uniform, hair damp from a mist. She read the note, jaw hardening. We'll bag it. This elevates. We'll request enhanced conditions. No contact, no third-party contact. Judge won't like this. Is he out? Ethan asked. His voice surprised him, hoarse like after a 12-hour fire line. Arraignment in the morning, she said. Could be posted already, could be holding. Either way, this is someone else moving for him. She looked around the living room that still held the outline of another man's presence. Do you have somewhere you can stay? He shook his head. I'm not leaving my house. Then let us help you stay, she said. Extra patrols tonight. Keep lights on. Don't open the door for anyone you don't know. If you hear anything, you call. After they left, he sat again at the table. The envelope's absence felt like a missing tooth his tongue kept finding. He texted Margot a photo of the note before it was bagged. They're threatening arson. Her reply came stacked with fury and procedure. I'm filing for an emergency no-contact extension and a stalking protective order. Also, I want you behind a lock station door tomorrow while we argue bail. I don't want you ambushed in a hallway. His phone buzzed once more. Ramirez, we pulled a jail call. Nolan told someone, make him jumpy. Smoke him out. That's a violation. We'll take it to the judge at first appearance. Ethan stared at the words until they blurred. He turned the porch light brighter, its glow reaching the wet street, a small declaration that the house was awake. He walked the perimeter, windows latched, sliders barred, hallway clear. In the bedroom doorway he paused. The bedspread still held the dent of Grace's side, the pillows slightly tilted toward the empty space. He lay down in the guest room, door open, a firefighter's habit. Hear the house breathe. The patrol car's headlights swept the ceiling in slow arcs every half hour, a moving reassurance. He inhaled, exhaled, counting 4, 7, 8, the way medics had taught him once long before tonight. In the dark, the threats turned into shapes, then back into words, then into breath. He thought about the manila envelope, about fires that happen and fires that are made. He thought about the text that started it all, the porch where a man had stood shaking, the officer's clear sentence. He was tired of reacting. In the morning, he would testify. He would draw lines on paper that became lines in the world. He would turn the story from fear back into fact. Outside, the sycamore let go of one last wet leaf. Inside, at last, Ethan's eyelids slid closed, not from surrender, but from the gravity of resolve. Dawn broke gray and heavy, the kind of morning where light seemed reluctant to enter. Ethan sat at the kitchen table in the same clothes he had worn the night before, a cold mug of coffee in front of him. He hadn't slept more than an hour at a time. Every creak of the house, every car passing outside had kept him half awake, listening, waiting. At 8 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was Margot. Court in 2 hours. Bail hearing. You need to be there. Don't go alone. Ethan typed back, I'll come with you. By 10, they were seated in the small, wood-paneled courtroom. The air smelled faintly of dust and polish. Grace was there too, sitting near the back with her shoulders curved inward, avoiding Ethan's eyes. She wore no makeup, her face pale, her hands gripping the strap of her bag like it was a lifeline. Then Nolan entered, wrists cuffed, flanked by deputies. Even in shackles, he carried himself with arrogance, scanning the room until his eyes locked on Ethan. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, small but sharp. Ethan met it with a steady stare, refusing to flinch. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair pulled into a bun, called the case. The prosecutor laid out the evidence: fraudulent quitclaim deeds, forged notary stamps, a tampered medication bottle, threatening messages, and a manila envelope warning Ethan to vacate. Mr. Price is not only a fraudster, the prosecutor said firmly, but a danger to the community. His pattern shows deliberate targeting of vulnerable households. His release would pose a risk to witnesses, including Mr. Ward and Mrs. Ward. The defense attorney tried to paint a different picture. My client was invited by Mrs. Ward. This was a domestic dispute blown out of proportion. The documents? Misunderstandings. The bottle? Common medication. The threats? No proof they came directly from him. Grace finally spoke, her voice shaking but clear. He told me what to say. He made me send that text. He used my anger to keep Ethan away. And when I hesitated, he threatened to ruin me too. Her words cracked, but they carried weight. For the first time, she wasn't just sobbing. She was testifying. The courtroom murmured. Nolan's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing at her like knives. The judge rapped the gavel for silence. Given the seriousness of these charges and the evidence of ongoing threats, bail is denied. The words landed like a hammer. Nolan's jaw clenched. He turned his gaze back to Ethan, eyes hard, a silent promise of unfinished war. Deputies moved him out, chains clinking against the floor. After court, Margot exhaled sharply. That buys us time, she said, collecting her files. But it's not over. He'll fight this case tooth and nail. You both need to stay sharp. Grace lingered by the hallway, waiting. When Ethan finally walked past, she whispered, I told the truth today because it was the only thing left I could give you. He stopped, his chest tightening. For a moment, he almost said something. Anger, forgiveness, wasn't sure which, but the words stayed locked inside. Instead, he nodded once and kept walking. Outside, the cold air cut against his skin, clearing his thoughts. The courthouse steps buzzed with reporters asking questions, cameras flashing. He ignored them, climbing into Margot's car. The weight of the morning pressed on him, heavier than his turnout gear ever had. As they pulled away, his phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Nolan. It was a number he didn't recognize, but the message was short. He wasn't working alone. Ethan stared at it, the unease spreading like fire through dry timber. If Nolan was only part of something larger, then the fight wasn't contained to one man. It was bigger, darker, and still unfolding. The thought followed him all the way home, pressing against every shadow in the quiet house. The drive back from the courthouse felt heavier than the hearing itself. Margot kept her eyes on the road, her jaw tight, while Ethan sat beside her, staring at the message glowing on his phone. He wasn't working alone. Back at the house, the afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, striping the living room in pale gold. Ethan set his phone on the table, but his gaze kept flicking back to it. The words weren't a warning. They were a puzzle, one that left every sound in the house charged with suspicion. By early evening, Margot returned with a folder of documents. She spread them across the kitchen island, her movements precise. The DA shared Nolan's seized notebook, she said. Addresses, parcel numbers, initials. 2 of them are confirmed victims already in litigation. But one, she tapped a page, her brow furrowing. This one is close to home. Ethan leaned over. The initials GW were written beside his own parcel number. His chest went cold. Grace Ward, Margot said softly. He wasn't just using her. He was planning to tie her into the fraud as a co-owner. If the fake deed had gone through, she would have been listed with him. That would have trapped you in years of legal battle. Ethan pulled back, the room tilting. She didn't know. Maybe not, Margot said, but he counted on her resentment. He knew she'd open the door. And that was enough. The air in the house felt thinner, harder to breathe. Ethan gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white. Grace hadn't just been manipulated. She had been marked as a piece of the plan, her name weaponized against him. A knock at the door jolted him. He moved carefully, checking the porch camera before opening. It was Grace. She stood in the fading light, her hotel key dangling from her wrist, her face pale and drawn. I saw the hearing on the news, she said quietly. And then someone slipped a note under my hotel door. It said, "You're still in it." She pulled the folded paper from her pocket with trembling hands. Margot took it, scanning quickly. The words were scrawled in the same blocky font as the envelope from a gate. Stay quiet. You'll get your share. Grace's voice cracked. He promised me security. Now he's promising I'll go down with him. Ethan, I didn't know, but I helped him without meaning to. And I don't know how to undo it. Ethan looked at her, his heart twisting. He wanted to shout, to demand why she let this start. But all he saw was the trembling in her hands, the exhaustion in her eyes. She was as trapped as he was, just on the other side of the net. Margot's tone was sharp, practical. This proves what I feared. Nolan has allies still moving outside. Someone slipped this note. Someone drove that Tacoma. If he's denied bail, he's still pulling strings. Grace pressed her palms together, tears slipping down her face. What if they come after me? What if I'm already part of this, whether I want to be or not? The house felt smaller, the walls closing in. Ethan walked to the porch and flicked on the light, staring out at the quiet street. Shadows stretched long across the wet pavement, but the silence didn't comfort him. It felt like a stage set before the curtain rose. Behind him, Grace's voice shook. Tell me what to do. Please. I'll do anything. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He watched the sycamore swaying in the breeze, leaves falling one by one. He thought of the text that had gutted him in the hospital, the forged deeds, the threats, and now this note. Finally, he turned back. His voice was steady, though his heart thundered. You'll go with Margot to the DA tomorrow. You'll give them every word Nolan ever said, every message, every detail. You'll make sure your name clears, not in his plan, not in his shadow. And after that, we'll see where we stand. Grace nodded, relief and fear mingling in her expression. Margot gathered the papers, her eyes sharp. If Nolan wasn't working alone, we'll know soon. And when we do, the fallout won't just hit him. It'll expose everyone who helped him. The porch light buzzed faintly overhead, its glow spilling into the street. Ethan stood there longer than necessary, watching the shadows, waiting for movement that never came. But the unease clung to him like smoke after a fire. Something larger was still out there, and it was coming closer. The next morning broke with a brittle chill, the kind that made the sycamore branches rattle against the siding like bony fingers. Ethan hadn't slept. He'd sat in the armchair by the window all night, porch light burning, every passing car throwing his reflection back at him in the glass. At 9, Margot pulled up, Grace in the passenger seat. They both looked worn, shadows under their eyes. Grace clutched a folder of her phone records, ready for the DA. Ethan opened the door, letting them inside. We'll go straight to the courthouse, Margot said, setting her briefcase down. But before that, Ramirez called. There's something you need to see. She slid a printed photo across the island. It was a still from jail surveillance. Nolan on a payphone, his mouth close to the receiver. A timestamp ran across the bottom. But it wasn't Nolan that froze Ethan's blood. It was the name on the visitor's log Ramirez had attached. Harold Crane. Ethan's stomach dropped. Crane? As in Lydia Crane? Exactly, Margot said grimly. Not a notary. A person. Her father. Retired clerk, blacklisted years ago for falsifying signatures. He's been helping Nolan, providing stamps, paperwork, the playbook. Grace's voice trembled. So he wasn't alone. Margot nodded. And he's local. Ramirez thinks Harold's the one who dropped those notes. He has no record of leaving the county, and his handwriting matches samples from old cases. The weight of it pressed into Ethan's chest. It wasn't just Nolan's arrogance. It was a family operation, patterns practiced and perfected. Grace's initials in the notebook weren't just coincidence. They had been positioned, marked like bait. Before they could leave, a sharp knock rattled the front door. All three froze. Ethan checked the porch camera. An older man stood there, tall but stooped, his silver hair slicked back, a leather satchel hanging from his shoulder. His face was lined, eyes sharp. Even through the screen, Ethan felt the presence of someone who'd spent years in the gray between law and crime. He opened the door only a crack, the chain locked. Can I help you? The man smiled thinly. Mr. Ward, I'm Harold Crane. Thought it best we talk face to face. Margot stepped forward. You shouldn't be here. There's an active case, and you're implicated. Harold ignored her, his gaze locked on Ethan. Nolan is reckless. That's why he's in chains. But the work? The work isn't reckless. It's survival. Families crumble. Houses change hands. It's the way of things. We just speed it along. Ethan's hand tightened on the doorframe. You forged my name. You poisoned me. The man's eyes glinted. No, Nolan poisoned you. I simply opened doors on paper. But you're a fighter. That's why I'm here. Walk away from testimony. Stay quiet, and this ends clean. No fires, no fights. Grace's voice broke from behind Ethan. You dragged me into this. You made me part of it without me knowing. Harold tilted his head, his expression unreadable. You opened the door yourself, my dear. We only stepped through. Ethan slammed the door shut, locking every bolt. His pulse thundered. Margot was already on the phone to Ramirez, reporting the visit. Grace collapsed into a chair, shaking. He knows where I am. He knows where we live. Ethan paced the living room, fury burning through him. Then we don't hide. We expose him. Every deed, every forgery, every family he's ruined. We burn down his scheme with truth. Minutes later, Ramirez called back. We got units moving. This is bigger than we thought. Harold's been behind half the forged notary cases we've been chasing for years. Nolan was just the face. Ethan gripped the phone, his voice steel. Then let's finish it. Through the window, the porch light glowed against the gray day. Outside, the sycamore rattled, its leaves falling like warnings. Inside, the truth finally had a name, Harold Crane. The reckoning was no longer just with Nolan, it was with the man who had built the con itself. The day of reckoning arrived faster than Ethan expected. Detective Ramirez called just after dawn. Harold Crane had been picked up near a storage unit on the edge of town. Inside, officers found boxes of forged stamps, half-completed deeds, and a binder thick with names and parcel numbers. Families who had been targeted, just like Ethan and Grace. By noon, Ethan and Grace were sitting in a stark conference room at the DA's office. The walls were bare except for a clock that ticked too loud, marking each second like a gavel. Across the table sat Ramirez, Margot, and a young assistant prosecutor with tired eyes. Ramirez slid the binder across the table. You need to see this. Ethan flipped through. Each tab bore initials. Families Nolan had mentioned in passing now had proof tying them to the Crane scheme. Some had lost their homes. Others were still fighting in court. Then he turned to a tab marked EW/GW, their house. Underneath were printed versions of texts Grace had sent Nolan, annotated in Harold's tight handwriting. Instructions, almost like stage directions. Tell him to stay away. Use the words, he lives here now. If he resists, escalate to hospital care narrative. Grace pressed her hand to her mouth. He scripted me, she whispered. Every word I thought I chose, he wrote it first. Ethan's chest tightened, a mix of anger and grief. The text that had gutted him in that hospital bed wasn't just her betrayal. It was a line rehearsed in Harold's game. It didn't absolve her, but it reframed everything. The assistant prosecutor leaned forward. We'll charge Harold with racketeering, forgery, conspiracy. Nolan with fraud, witness tampering, attempted poisoning. Grace, your testimony is crucial. The recorder you turned in seals much of this. Grace nodded slowly, tears shining in her eyes. I'll testify. I don't care what it costs me. Later that week, the preliminary hearing filled a larger courtroom. Reporters lined the back. Harold sat at the defense table, calm, silver hair gleaming under the lights, as if he were the one holding court. Nolan, shackled beside him, scowled at the floor. When Grace took the stand, the room stilled. Her voice shook at first, but each sentence gained strength. She admitted her anger, her weakness, her willingness to believe Nolan's promises. And then she revealed the truth. The recorder, the instructions, the manipulation that turned her into a pawn. Nolan glared at her, his composure cracking. Harold only tilted his head, as though studying a chess piece making its last move. Finally, it was Ethan's turn. He spoke of the night in the hospital, the taste of the tainted tea, the text that nearly broke him. He spoke of walking back into his house with an officer at his side, of watching a stranger tremble when told he had no rights there. His voice never rose. It didn't need to. The weight of his steady tone told the story more powerfully than anger could. When the hearing ended, the judge ruled both men would be held without bail pending trial. Reporters shouted questions as deputies led Harold and Nolan away. Their partnership cracked wide open under the weight of evidence. Outside, the winter sun broke through clouds, spilling pale light across the courthouse steps. Grace stood beside Ethan, her face streaked with tears, but her shoulders straighter than they had been in weeks. "I don't know if you can ever forgive me," she said quietly. "But I needed you to know I finally chose the truth." Ethan looked at her, the wound in his chest still raw, but no longer bleeding. "Forgiveness isn't today," he said, "but truth matters. And you gave it." They walked down the steps together, not as husband and wife restored, not as enemies, but as two people scarred by the same storm, carrying different weights of guilt and survival. That night, Ethan sat on his porch, the sycamore shedding its last leaves. The porch light glowed warm against the street, the same light that had watched Nolan's arrogance crumble. The house was his again, not because of a piece of paper, but because he had stood his ground and spoken the truth. Inside, the silence was heavy but honest. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan allowed himself to close his eyes, not in fear, but in fragile peace. Because the men who had tried to erase him were gone, and the words that had once cut him in half don't come back. He lives here now, were no longer a sentence. They were evidence, sealed in a courtroom, powerless to hurt him again. The house had survived. So had he.